Okay, we will talk about scatter plots on this video. We have three different graphs to start off with. These are all scatter plots. Notice they're not technically lines because you can't connect these points and get a straight line. Instead, we have a lot of real-life data that you plot, and you get what's called a trend of the data either increasing or decreasing, or in this case, nothing's happening. Okay? So these are three types of scatter plots, and we're going to learn about them right now. So what is a scatter plot? Okay, a scatter plot is a graph with points plotted to show a possible relationship between two sets of data. What is meant by correlation? A correlation describes a trend between two sets of data. Okay? The types of correlations are positive. What a positive correlation is, it means as the x values are getting bigger, the y values are also getting bigger. So you're going to have a general direction of an uphill direction. All right? This top one up here is also a positive trend. Okay, it's similar to the positive slope of a line. Okay, you also could have a negative correlation. Negative means as the x values, or these values, are increasing because these x values are getting bigger, the y values are getting smaller. Okay? It's going this direction. Okay? So with positive, both sets of data values increase. With negative, one set of data values increases or decreases as the other increases. So one's going up, the other's going down. The third type is when you don't have a correlation. This is no correlation. The points are scattered and you cannot tell an uphill trend or a downhill trend, so there's no correlation. There is no relationship between the sets of data. All right, and those are the three types of correlations we'll be talking about with scatter plots. Okay, so the steps to identifying correlations. You want to first identify your independent variable and your dependent variable. Remember, independent is x. That's what happens first. That is generally the cause, whereas the dependent is the y. It's the effect. It's what happens second. Remember, Roy D., the cow painting up and down, depends on Dixie. That still comes to play in this. Okay, the independent variable will be on the x-axis. The dependent variable will be on the y-axis. Ask yourself, as the independent variable increases, as you're going this way on the x-axis, will the dependent variable increase, decrease, or show no relationship? By the increase in the independent variable. If it increases, it will look something like this. If it decreases, it will look something like this. If there's no relationship shown, it's going to be scattered and you will not see an uphill or downhill trend. All right? Let's talk about a trend line. A trend line helps show the correlation between data sets more clearly. It can also be helpful when making predictions based on the data. Okay, if you see, for example, if you see this uphill trend and you know it's going this direction, you draw a trend line and you can make a prediction that when I'm over here, like on 12, way out here, I'm going to be somewhere up here. according to my data, this makes sense when I'm over here on 12, whereas a point down here wouldn't make sense, a point way over here wouldn't make sense. It would be something right here based on the data. We'll look at some more of that in just a second. So let's go ahead and look at a situation so you can start tying this all together. Coach Rowland's data. Coach Rowland noticed that the number of baskets his players were making had declined during practice. He feels that the reason for this decline is that his players are not getting enough sleep the night before practice. So Coach Rowland collects the following data for the 10 players on his team. He has 2 sets of data: the hours slept and the number of baskets made. Okay, now Coach Rowland is saying that the number of baskets made depends on how much sleep they're getting. So this is the dependent, the y, and this is the independent, the x. So we're going to plot this on the x-axis, hours slept, and number of baskets on the y-axis. So basically these are just like ordered pairs, 8, 11. So here's 8, and then up to 11. 6, 9, up to 9. 5, 6, 8, 10. Notice it's not a line, right, guys? It's not going to be linear. It's a scatter plot. 9, 10. 4, 5. 8, 9. 7, 8. 9, 9. And 10, 12. Okay, so we plotted all the points. Let's use the scatter plot to make predictions and look for correlations in the data or a pattern in the data points by drawing a trend line. Before we do that, do you see a correlation? Does it look like it's going a certain direction? Looks to me like it's going uphill. So that would tell us that there is a positive correlation, meaning the more sleep the player gets, the more baskets they are making, according to this. So we're going to go ahead and make predictions by drawing a trend line. The trend line may not be true for every point, but look for the overall pattern the data seem to fit. When you're drawing a trend line by hand, you're not going to draw a line that goes through every point. Instead, what you try to do is get about the same amount of points above the line as you have below the line. So I'm going to grab a ruler. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So when I lay my ruler up against those points, right here it says draw a trend line for the data above and use it to predict the number of baskets that a player with 11 hours of sleep would make based on the data. Okay, so I cannot get my trend line to go through every point, right? It's obvious. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My goal is to get about 5 points below and about 5 points above. Okay? And if I can go through as many points as possible, that's great too. Okay? So you're not always going to go through the origin here, but it looks like on mine, it looks like it might go through the origin. Okay? Or maybe not. So that looks decent. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 above. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 below, and I could go through probably 1 point exactly, maybe 2 points exactly. So that's a decent trend line. Now, one trend line might be different than the other. The goal is that you have something that is reasonable. This one I went through several points. I have a few below and I have a few above. When you can actually do a trend line in the calculator, which I'll show you later, and it will give you as exact a trend line as possible. But what I could do with this is I can go to 11 hours slept, and I can go up to my trend line, and I can figure out, is it going to be exactly 12? No, probably not, but it's going to be somewhere in this vicinity, right? So I would say probably between maybe 10 and 13, right? So to predict the number of baskets, it could be anywhere in this area, maybe even 11 to 13, right? Somewhere in that area. Is that exact? No, because it's not an exact science. All right, so 11 to 13, 10 to 13, 12 to 14, something in that area. Predict the number of baskets that a player with no hours of sleep would make. So if I have no sleep, based on my trend line, I might make a basket. Okay? So if you had 0 for yours, if you had maybe, somewhere down here, it's going to be low. We don't know exactly what, but it's going to be low. Based on the data, can you make an observation as to how a player's sleep patterns affect the number of baskets that he or she will make? Yes. As the hours of slept increase, as the hours of sleep increases, the number of baskets also increases. And that is the definition of a positive correlation. And those are our notes for scatter plots. On the next video, we'll get started with some homework.